Hi, this is Viv, and you're listening to the new episode of If I Did, You Can Too. In this episode, my guest is actually an artist, and not any kind of artist that you can think of. He is an origami artist, and because of how unique that is, and all of the beautiful work that he's done, I decided to bring him to the show because the journey that he got there and how origami just changed his whole life is something that you all need to hear. So why don't we get inspired? Okay, so here we are with yet again another episode of If I Did, You Can Too. And we have a new guest. This is literally the first time that I'm actually talking to this person alone. I only talked to him like for a very brief not even 15 minutes. But I've heard a lot about him. I've listened to the podcast that he was in. I've seen his art. This guy right here is an artist. I know it's not normal for me to bring in artists to the show, but this one right here is artist, and he's origami artist. And I'm just gonna let him tell his story to you guys. Let's see. Hi, Ali. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm an origami artist. I've been designing, teaching, and also studying origami for about 10 years. But for the last 4 years, nearly 4 years, I've been also working as a UX designer in Cafebazaar, and now I'm a team leader in Cafebazaar. And yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Aside from your job and being an origami artist, who is Ali? How do people see you?
Probably most of the people know me by my origami works and the photos that I share on my social media. I very rarely share about my daily job and UX thing on my social media. So probably I would say people know me by my origami and also Japan.
Oh, Japan. That's a very interesting thing. Why don't we just dive into it, huh? Japan, when did it start? Where does it stand in your life? Tell me.
Right. So back in the 90s, when I was 2 years old, my family went to Japan, and my father was studying in the virology. And so I was growing up as a kid, and I went to kindergarten and also the first grade of the elementary school, which was in Japanese. So that's how I got exposed to the Japanese language and the culture. And then when I was eight years old, we came back to Iran. So I had that in my history. And because I never had anyone to practice, except my brother, to practice Japanese with, the only thing that we had that we've been in touch with the Japanese language and the culture was the cartoons that my mother recorded on the VHS tapes. So yeah, that's how the childhood went on. And later on, when I went to university, again I realized that the origami wasn't something of a child's play. It wasn't just a craft that could entertain people. Definitely it's very much entertaining, even just as a craft or as something to play with. But it had more more science and also technique to what I would have thought. And thanks to internet, I was able to search more on the topic and connect with the people. And so that's how I again encountered the origami.
Mm-hmm. And connecting with the people, that's a very key word right there. Using the internet and connecting with people. You went back to Japan, right? So how did that happen?
Yeah, so when I was 19 or 20 years old, when I started learning origami in a more serious way and getting more serious about the origami. And by the way, I studied applied mathematics.
Oh, me too. You're the only person that I've seen studying applied mathematics. There's no use for me though, but yeah.
Yeah, And although I was studying in University of Tehran, I went with a huge like hope and motivation for studying the subject, right? So after the concours, which I had to take like 2 times, the second time I went into the university, I was like, finally, I went to an interesting subject in the university, and it's we can have fun, we can learn a lot of new stuff. But the truth was, it was so disappointing. It was so frustrating with that origami became, what do you call it, like an escape thing to go there and just get out of that university and all the stuff that's happening outside. So I would say, thanks to the worst educational experience I had in the university, I could dedicate myself entirely to the topic of the origami, that it became as part of my identity, as part of my everyday life. That happened. I like studied more deep into the origami, and 3 years later, like it was around like 2013, we submitted a paper to an every 4-year scientific origami meeting in the world, which that year was happening in the Tokyo University. We got accepted, and we were invited to give our presentation along with the other origami researchers, scientists, and artists. So that was my first ever and the most and the highlight of my origami moments, that I got invited to an international origami community. Most of these people, because I had corresponded with them through email, I knew them, but I never had a chance to meet them in person. And this was somehow a dream coming true. And to give you an idea about how interesting this was for me, before even I knew that I am able to go to Japan to meet these people, there was a TED Talk from Robert J. Lang, and he's like one of the most famous scientists and artists in the origami. He's an ex-NASA engineer, which he dedicated his...
Wow.
Which he left his job and dedicated himself for almost 20 years to writing about origami. And his TED Talk is one of the most famous TED Talks because it's also a very old one. I guess it was recorded in 2009, if I'm not wrong. And it's like 18 minutes of talk, right? I listened to this so many times that I could say the words and the sentences from my memory with the tone of Robert Lang. So I was walking and listening to it like hundreds of times because I like the whole idea, the concept, that the whole thing that was happening. So you can imagine meeting such a person in face to face was a huge thing. And we had also exchanged some emails, and he's a super kind guy. Anybody who sends him an email, he responds to kindly. And so this was happening in 2014, and then the paper got accepted. Me and my friend Q-Mars traveled to Japan for 1 month. Like the event was 2 weeks, but we stayed more to see the rest of the country and travel and backpack and meet the people. And about the people part, there's a lot of stories to tell about the people part that that we might not even have the time to talk about all of that, but I try to be selective here. It's not just about the origami people, the professional people, but the random people that you see here and there. And that makes an interesting story. That makes a huge part of me. And now I say that origami is not just about the art, the aesthetics, the beauty. It's just about connecting with the people. So I wouldn't know any other way to connect with the people faster than origami. If I knew, probably I would learn that and I would use that.
Wow. Oh my God. This is so beautiful. It's like I'm listening to someone telling a story already. Like I'm not interviewing. I forget that I have to ask questions from you. Okay. So tell us, because I literally thought you were going to come up with some stories of people that you met and how they inspired you and how you actually nurtured that friendship connection with them. And also another question that I have is, did you just start sending emails to other origami artists, be like, yo, I love this, why don't we connect?
Right. So yeah, that was pretty that. So in the first and second year, when I realized that there's not resources of origami in my country, I said, okay, why not ask the author and the artist about his book, and maybe he can share a digital version, or he would be able to send even a print version if he has an extra. So I was a teacher by then, and I said that but the subject that I was teaching was related to math and origami. And when I sent an email, one of the authors, Peter Engel, said that he can send me the book. And even if I wanted to buy the book, it was out of stock. So he wrote the book 1 year before I was born in 1989. And his book is one of the most important resources in the origami community. So I contacted with the Peter Engel, and he not only sent me that book, but also his two other books, and he signed them, and he signed them to me and my students in 2012. So this was like 2 years before I go to Japan and Tokyo. And it was unbelievable, because I never would have thought, like just talking with someone over emails would end up me receiving a package from US with so many books. And this gave me a boost in terms of like studying and getting more serious in the subject, to the point that I was able to also design my own origamis a year later. And when I designed my origamis, I had to illustrate them to be able to publish them, because origami has steps and diagrams. For those who have seen the origami instructions on the internet or in any book, there's an algorithm that says first step is this, second you have to fold that, and etc. So I learned to work with the vector softwares to draw origamis, and my first published origami design was in MIT's Origami Club. And I sent that to the MIT Origami Club, and it got accepted. They published it. And for those who gets published in their magazine, in their annual convention book, they would also send you a book. So that was my way to getting more resources about book to design and also publish origami designs. And they would also send me the convention books back to me as a complimentary copy. So this happened, and I got more serious, and then I got into and my network grew as I was also talking with people and finding new artists, talking about their style of folding. And this was a really interesting time, because currently when I'm looking, I know most of these things, but discovering this for the first time and being in touch with such a kind community is something that I miss sometimes. I don't know if you feel this kind of thing. So for the first time, it feels like discovering a gold mine. Like all the people are super supportive. All the people in the community are very kind. The subject is interesting, and you're learning day by day. And it's a really interesting thing to be in. And as you move forward, you reach a point that you somehow your learning curve also flattens. So that was, I would say, one of the most interesting and exciting moments of my origami journeys. And yeah, so email, and at that time Flickr was also very popular. I was also active in the Flickr, Facebook, still Flickr and Facebook to the I'm amazed that still Flickr and Facebook is popular and active in the origami community. People have moved to Instagram now, but still they did in the origami community, they did pretty late.
It is so interesting to me that even though you told me that you did not find enough sources in Iran, in your country, about origami, you were just like, never mind. I'm just going to email the writer directly. Why not? Are you normally like this in your life? Like you don't take no for an answer, right? Are you that type of person?
Well, that's a good point. Normally in my life, I don't know if I do have this in every aspect that I'm encountered with. But one thing that I realized recently is that I wasn't aware about this pattern, but I would say actually being naive and stupid in things is good sometimes. Like, so when you grow up, when you get old, when you get wise, as we say, you start to calculate the risks and the rewards of doing a thing. Should I read this book? Should I go into this new job? Should I go into relation with this person? Everything that happens to you is somehow a calculations of risk and rewards. And you unconsciously sometimes do this, and then you make a decision. But the world and the life is more random and more spontaneous, and it cannot be calculated. It's so random that you never would be able to anticipate what would happen if you do something. So in theory, on the paper, if I was there to give an advice to my younger self, I would say, you're so stupid that you wouldn't know how risky and how hard this journey would be. There's no origami artist that at least I knew of by that, like 10 years ago. There was no access to the resources, and I wasn't even able to travel to other countries because I was a student, and also the visa was super hard. So by all of these things, I would say I was stupid enough to not know how hard it is and just pursue what I wanted to do, like just now. And these little steps, these little successes and motivations and small packages of progress, accumulated, and 10 years later put me where I am now. So I wish and I hope to keep my naivety and stupidity, and also for my friends to explore and also see new things in their life. Because if you start being too cautious, being too calculative, if that's a word, you would definitely miss on a lot of things, and you would definitely miss on a lot of new experiences. And I would say I definitely want new experiences in any stage of my life. And I wish, because through experiences I learn, and through meeting new people, I learn new things. And that's one of the main drivers that keeps me going.
This importance of connection and getting to know people, getting to know more and more people, and having better and bigger network, I think was also clear when you started this Origami Talk. Can you tell us what it was about and why you started it and how it went on, the whole thing about it?
Right. again, getting back to a couple of years ago. So the Origami Talk project was started at the beginning of the quarantine, but its root gets back to many years ago, especially like the thing that I was saying, like walking and listening to Robert Lang's TED Talk. There was also another documentary that I did the same with, but it was longer and it was in video, so I wasn't able to just listen to that as a podcast, but it was called Between the Folds. The documentary was showcasing different artists in the origami world and was not only showing their artworks, but also talking with them. And for the first time, so every artist that I was seeing in that documentary, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. That was the only thing that I could find by that time, but I wasn't able to find anything more, or at least that much well-produced about the origami artists. So I thought, why not? If I'm traveling to Japan, I grab my camera, I interview the people, I ask about them, about why. So the question I first was asking in 2014 was why origami, or why people should care about origami, and asking that why question from the people. So I interviewed the artist in that meeting, and also 2 years later I went to Japan like in 2014, 2016, and 2017. In all these three trips, I did interview Japanese artists as well as the other artists from other countries, because that was an international annual gathering. Many artists from all around the world was gathering to talk and share their knowledge about the origami and also give workshops. So that was my chance to interview people. So my interest in the life of the origami artists gets back pretty early of my origami journey. But then later on, the problem was it was a one-man show. I needed an edit. I was too perfectionist about choosing the music. I wasn't good with the editing, and the materials and the interviews never got published, and it still sits in my hard drives, like terabytes of videos and interviews in my computer and my hard drive. So that was unfortunate. But when the quarantine hit, and with the rise of the Zoom meetings, I thought that this is a great time to ease off a little bit on the quality of the production and more on the content. So I just said, okay, I do this. This was pretty hard to do in Iran because the payment and even Zoom was filtered back then. And so I was lucky enough to be able to manage all this from every single small bits of operation the project had, and the website, everything. And also the artists were kind enough to accept my invitation to the show. And I was able to talk with 24 artists in a year. It was first weekly event, and with about like 70 to 100 live audience. And each session we were talking about the life of the origami artist, from anything, from the mundane things. How do you keep your paper? Where do you keep your paper? Like, because you're an origami artist, how do you store them? How many papers do you have? Or what do you do beside origami? Whatever, it was somehow structured, but it was also, again, just as what you're doing, it was an interview. It was, I would compare that to a chat in a bar instead, in a virtual bar. So it wasn't me just asking questions from the artist. It was like me driving the conversation to different places that I thought might be interesting. And the thing that we weren't doing was folding origami models, because you could find that in YouTube in every convention that people attend in the origami. And that's also one of the highest asked questions. How do you fold this from the origami artists? But I put that also aside and try to just connect and chat and make friends through origami and the subject.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I told you this before as well. I really love the whole idea of virtual bar. And it is so important, the fact that you shed light more on the artist behind the art. Because I also believe that art wouldn't have been here if it was not for the artist behind it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you are one of those. You're also one of those artists. You said that you created your own origami as well, right?
Yeah. So interesting thing about the series was I knew some of the, like, vaguely knew some of the stories, but when the artists were telling them in details, I knew how random was the origami artists came to origami. And like if each and every one of these people had an interesting random story to share. And so it was a live event, and I never got a chance to record, to again publish. When it comes to publishing, I'm not that good. But I'm hoping I have the recordings. Hopefully, I hope be able to publish them as podcasts or video recordings on the YouTube now that I'm less perfectionist about the publishing materials.
So I actually want to ask the question from you, because you were asking this question from so many people. Why origami? Why should people care about it?
Yeah, I think I partially answered the question, but personally for me, origami has everything that is interesting in life. So it gives you the sense of discoverability. So time and time again, you discover something, whether it has been discovered by other people or not, when you play with the paper. You could improvise with the paper without caring too much of what happens. At the same time, it strengthens your what do you call it, like motor movability, or your hand, brain, and eye coordination. So it's just also an exercise to your brain and your hand. And if you want to get serious about the scientific part of origami, the geometry and the rules behind the origami can get so deep, and also it has a lot of potential to explore the math and the geometry behind the paper. Also, it allows you to, if you like teaching, and I like teaching. This was the subject that I was teaching in school, universities, kindergarten, to all ages. This is a perfect thing to teach. Whether you want to just make it as a fun subject or combine it with the mathematics, it would be also an interesting thing. And if you just want to chat with people or make friends, origami is the thing. It had worked for me many times. We wouldn't be talking if I wasn't into origami now. So I cherish that, and I value that, and I would see that thanks to origami. And what else? Yeah, so all these different things which gives meaning to my life is in the origami. It is also visually aesthetic and beautiful. So, as I said, I don't have any, what do you call, like, I'm not sure if the word is correct, but prejudice with the origami. Like, I would happily leave origami if I find something better than origami, but I haven't been able, because I'm actually not very good at sticking to things. I try many different things, and when it sticks, I'll continue as much as it is interesting for me. And so far, origami has been so interesting for me. And if it's not one day, probably I would leave it to something else. But I'm not sure if that happens. Like my calculating mind says like 10 years of experience might not easily overcome with another subject or thing. But now as I move on, I also combine it with my work, with my other stuff. So it's not just the origami world. It's as a tool for anything that I do in my life. So rather than being a separate world that I go into that world and do some stuff and attend some stuff, it's rather than a world that I can use as a tool in my everyday life. And that's a little bit flipped around compared to early ages. And for the people, I would say it would be also possible for them to try that, because it never hurts. It's so easy to try like 15 minutes, 20 minutes of this experience. And I would believe that it is not for all the people. You shouldn't be necessarily interested in it. But if you try it and if you be open to it, time and time again, I've seen people saying that, oh, this is not for me. And I said, okay, just do this for the next 15 minutes, be open about it. And it changed their mind. So I would also suggest to do that.
You're a UX designer right now, right? Okay. So that UX designer part, how did you get to that? How's that even related to origami?
Right.
Is it something that you do like a side hustle? Because it does not seem like origami is the side hustle, you know?
Currently, the origami is somehow the side hustle, because I'm full-time in an employee of the Cafebazaar. But yeah, it doesn't seem from the outside because of the social media and things that I post on the social media, which is mostly origami. But how did it happen? So, as I said, I tried many different things in my life. So when I was in high school and was studying for the concours exam, I got so bored about just learning how to overcome the exam rather than learning the subject that I rejected studying for university. That's why I took the exam for the second year. And instead I was trying different things, learning new like 3D softwares, 3ds Max, learning how to design websites. I've always been interested in design related subjects, and studying Italian by self-studying and chatting with Italian friends. So this designing website was something that I wanted to do for a long time, but I wasn't able to learn that to the point that I could work and choose it as a job, because it required coding. And I wasn't very good, and still am not good at coding. And so it always put me off. So you could do the design somehow, but you needed some knowledge of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript to put all of these together. So because I didn't have that coding skill, and also no friend to cover that part for me, it never became any serious. Later on, when I went to Japan and came back, and I got more serious about making origami as my main source of income, I had to manage a small team, and I had to learn about the startup culture and how a team would be developed, and how can I introduce origami as a service or a product. So again, I went back to the sources about the startups. One of the books that I learned, that I read, was Lean Startup, and I was also seeing courses on how to start a startup by Stanford, which is freely and publicly available. And that was the time that I got back into designing websites again, but this time it was easier because the tools were more, tools did the job easier by eliminating the coding part. I was able to design the website without knowing how to code. I knew the basics, but I didn't know it so well that I write down the codes for my own website. So when this cracked. I started designing different websites for myself, for my friends. I also took contract jobs of designing websites, and it was like a fun thing. And I was also learning more about the UX. At the same time, I got randomly connected through origami with a friend who was working in Cafebazaar, and he suggested me to apply for the job. But the time he told me was like in 2017, the summer of 2017. I was in Japan. I said, I'm not able to apply for the job. I'm in the middle of a trip, backpacking and stuff, but I would when I got back to Iran. And I did that, and I was lucky enough to got accepted to the pass the interview and got accepted as an employee. And since then, it was the only thing that could compete with origami. And to be honest, for 2 years or so, I completely put aside the origami because it was so interesting, and also at the same time teaching me new stuff that I was interested about, along with working with the beautiful and smart people that I could learn from in the company. And then just with the start of the quarantine, I thought I need something to get away from all that craziness in the work and in the world. So I again got back to origami and defined the Origami Talk project, as well as getting more in touch with the origami community again.
Ali, what is your plan in 5 years? Where are you standing? What projects are you handling? What the future holds?
Well, this is the question I would have no answer to, because when I went to Cafebazaar, I never had a plan to stay there more than like 5 or 6 months. But it took me 4 years now. It was the same for origami. Anything that I picked, anything that I chose, I had no plan to what would I do with that. But to give you a rough idea, some of the ideas that are going through my mind related to origami is that I would like the origami to be more accessible to the people in a different way than YouTube. As I said, Origami Talk was an attempt to that, to not only learn about origami, but get more motivated and to get to know the artist behind the artworks. So what I would like to do is somehow related to teaching origami and getting it more accessible to the people. I'm also an origami diagrammer, which means that I diagram illustration, technical drawings of the steps for my own designs and other people designs. I'm currently working with a fabulous origami artist on her book, which will be published in a year, I guess. And so maybe publishing a book is also in origami for myself and for other people is something that I'm interested about. But usually I don't have a clear idea of what I want to do. So it's very short term. It's very flexible in terms of what I would like to do with the origami.
This is good. The only reason I actually asked this question, because I hated when people ask this question from me myself. The only reason I asked this from my guests is to show people that you don't really need to have like a perfect solid plan that I'll do this and then this and then this, and in 5 years I'll be this.
Right.
Because you don't really know what the future holds, right? So you have a vague idea of, okay, I'm going to go this way. This is what I'm thinking about right now. And maybe tomorrow you just change. You become a different person and you have a different plan for your 5 years. This is perfect. Perfect answer. Perfect answer was no answer. So you got it. Great.
I got the point.
Yes, you got it. Ali, tell our people where they can find you. The Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever handle you have, just share it with them.
Right. I'm mostly active on my Instagram, which is Ali Bahmani, and that's where I post about my journey and my things about the origami. If something happens related to origami, that's where I post mostly. I'm also have been active a little bit in Twitter, which is mostly in Persian, and that's AB Origami. And yeah, I think that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. You can also send me emails if you're more email oriented to alibmn@gmail.com. But
what if they want to send letters?
That's wow. That I'm sorry we didn't talk about letters. So because I have a whole story about the letters to tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as I said, I was emailing the Origami Artists, but what was really different about the community was these people were sending letters, postal cards, and packages. So we were exchanging like snail mail packages to each other, and I kept each and every envelope and postal cards. Not only the what was inside the envelopes, but the envelopes. So like large bags of envelopes with the name of these artists and the address of these people. I've kept them. I'm actually a person that doesn't throw away stuff regularly, especially if it's related to papers, anything paper related. So I keep the papers of like gums when I find them interesting, or chocolates and stuff, and like flatten them to fold them later. And also these envelopes is one of the things that I've kept them. So to be honest, my favorite way of connecting with the people is through letters. And I've started this recently. I bought a mechanical typing machine to start corresponding with people and in the old ways. So definitely, if you're a person that is that sends out packages, postal cards, or looking for pen friends, I'm asking you to do this. So you can send me a message in my Instagram or email to exchange the addresses.
Oh, this is so cute. I'm gonna do this as well, because like we're not living in the same country even.
Right.
So let's just do this. I love it. It's so cool. Okay, Ali, what is one thing you want to leave the listeners of this podcast with?
Wow, this is a little bit hard. So I would say curiosity happens when you care less about the outcome of what you're doing. So the more you care less about what would happen if I just fail, or what would happen if I just don't go in a way that most people have gone, probably it automatically contributes to your curiosity, rather than using curiosity as a way to getting better results.
Ali, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Let's wrap the show up. You say your goodbye to the audience in whatever way you want to do it, and then I will do my own version of goodbye. Go ahead.
Right. I hope those who listen to this found it interesting, and there's so much to say about the origami and the people and how I got connected with the people. But what I would say is that I hope I had inspired you to just get a little bit more curious about origami. And I don't know what would happen. How do you make use of the origami? I don't know if it changes your life or it's just a fun thing to try for 15 minutes and you just put it aside. But whatever that is, I hope I was able to give you a little bit of a nudge, give you a little bit of an inspiration to go in that direction. And with that, if that happens, I'm more happy and more content with the long journey that I have been in for the last 10 years. And hope you have a great time.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you guys for listening. This was yet another episode of If I Did, You Can Too. And until next time, bye-bye.